You are able to listen me? आपको आवाज आ रही है मेरी? हेलो, who is able to listen me? किसको अनम्यूट करके? Okay, then we'll start the class. To see the full. Okay, we'll start the class to study endocrine system, and before that we will study the endocrine system. We have to study about the comparison and the different. Now, this endocrine system is a communication. Listen, Sukman, just tell me, are you able to listen? All of you are able to. आ रही है ना मेरी? Okay. This system, like a nervous system, and nervous system is communicating to all the body, and the system is also communicating to the all bodies are communicating. Now, what are the system is number one, for the nervous system. We'll see the features of the nervous system. It is a precise arrangement. Precise arrangement means there is a nerve fiber, there is a synapses, and there are the special arrangement is there for the nervous system. The unit of the nervous system is the neuron. So neuron has a different parts, and these different parts are communicating to the either the other neurons, or either it is communicating to the muscles. And this communication, the synaptic signals, and you have already learned about the synapse. So communicating to the other neuron through the some molecule is the neurotransmitter. So one neuron is communicating to the other neuron is known as the synapse, and it is communicating transmitters. This nervous system, it has special arrangement, anatomical arrangement, that means special structure is there. The parts of the brain, the spinal cord is there, the different vertebrae is there. There is a alpha motor neuron, there is a gamma motor neuron, there is a horn cells are there, lateral are the cells which are specially arranged, and there is a sensory nerve fibers are there. There are the motor nerve fibers are there. So there. If anywhere there is a damage about this nervous system, then the particular communication system for that particular, either it is a sensory or it is a motor, it is particularly the damage will occur. Damage, or either it is a sensory damage. Very rapid. That rapid signals are depend on the myelination of the nerve fiber. The classification of the nerve fiber already see alpha. So the diameter is depend on the myelination of the nerve fiber. So the bigger, larger diameter, the faster communication. And this communication is in a short duration. Short duration means it is in milliseconds. Particularly the knee reflex, knee jerk, the duration is the 17 to 20. So very is a part of the seconds this communication occurs. Influence on the endocrine output. So the some of the information are coming for either the external environment or from the internal environment. It is communicating through the spinal cord to the brain and ultimately brain communicating to the uh, endocrine part of the brain, that is a hypothalamus, and hypothalamus is receiving all the inputs and communicating to the entry pituitary to release the hormones, and these hormones we can study in detail with the different structure and functions over there. So this is the nervous system. Special arrangement is there, system is there, and the endocrine system displayed means there are the cells into the different parts of the body. Thalamus is ganglion, which is to parts of the body with the nervous system. So ultimately that communication system will goes to the communicating to the different parts of the body. Now it is a blood-borne signals. Whatever the secretion is there of the group of the cells, because the group of the cells, they are in the different areas of the body. For example, adrenal cortex, adrenal medulla, it is in the abdominal. Pancreas also, it is in the abdominal region. This in the throat region there is a thyroid gland. Thyroid gland is secreting the thyroid hormone. There is a parathyroid gland is there secreting the parathyroid hormone, and some of the cells are secreting the calcitonin. So entry pituitary, posterior pituitary, and different parts of the group of the cells in different areas, and the special arrangement is there for which is secreting the estrogen and progesterone, and testis, which is secreting the testosterone. So these are the uh, group of the cells which secretes the molecules and enter into the bloodstream, and it is communicating to all parts. Now, the disadvantage molecules which are targeting to the cells. If the cells are not required to the particular molecule, even though this either it is a thyroid from the thyroid gland, or either it is from the testis, or it is from the pancreas cells. These cells, if they are not receiving, also ultimately what will happen? Signals are typical to the particular cells, but whenever it is exposed, only it will come. The cells have the different type of the arrangement to accept those cells, those molecules. Depends on receptor on target tissue, that already I have explained. That is the special arrangement is there on the particular cell, and this cell is accepting those molecules. Simple example, the beta cells of the pancreas is secreting the insulin, and insulin is secreted whenever in the plasma is increases. But once the insulin is secreted, it is exposed to all cells in the body. But the main target cells are the skeletal adipose tissue and the liver cells. So these liver cells, skeletal muscle cells, and adipose tissue have the special receptors, are the receptors known as the GLUT transporters, and these GLUT transporters are accepting that these insulin receptors stimulated, and ultimately the glucose is entering into this tissue. The other tissues in the body also exposed to this insulin, but the function is not as much as that of the insulin is in the adipose tissue or in the liver cells or the skeletal muscle. The signals are slow, depend upon the blood circulation, and this blood circulation, it is how the distribution of the molecules are there in the blood circulation, and these molecules are exposed to the target tissues, depend on that to the tissues. Exposure is depend on either in a minutes or in a half an hour or 1 hour, or it may be a one full day, or it may be 1 month. So number of days, not in seconds. It is not in seconds, but it is in days, hours, and days. It is once the concentration of the hormone is increases in the plasma, it remains constant to the higher side for many days. they depend on the how the which the hormone is there. Example is the anti. It is in the plasma for 25 to 30 minutes. The thyroxine, the T4, it is remaining for few days, 8 to 10 days is there. So like that, the number of molecules which are once it is entered into the blood circulation, it may be for a few days. And this endocrine system has an influence onto the central nervous system. So there is a communication between the nervous system to endocrine system and endocrine system to nervous system. And finally, both are regulating the normal functions of the body. Our depends on the how the inputs are there, whether the external environment, internal environmental input. Internal environments, the concentration of the plasma depend on the sodium concentration, potassium concentration, glucose concentration, cholesterol concentration, and some other parameters are there. That is the blood pressure is there, temperature is there. Temperature is internal environmental temperature or external environmental temperature. This already I have explained you, but in detail written over here. The nervous system is a wired system. It is a cable-like arrangement is there, and it is communicating cells either between the other neuron or neuron to the skeletal muscle cell. The communication molecules, they are known as the neurotransmitters, and these neurotransmitters are not circulating into the bloodstream, but it is communicating, it is secreted and communicating with the space area available between the one neuron to other neuron, that is a synapse, and one neuron to the skeletal muscle cell or smooth muscle cell, that is a neuromuscular. There is an anatomic relationship. That means the spatial structure has to be structure if it is functioning well and is possible in milliseconds, and it coordinates very fast, coordinates very rapid in few seconds comes. The it is a wireless system, and this wireless system there is a no special arrangement is there. One gland is secreting the molecules, it diffuses, and wherever the blood is circulating to all the parts of the body, these molecules are exposed to tissue, whether it is whether wire or not. If the tissues, these molecules are exposed, it is wasted. The hormones is released target to the different tissues, and it is targeted to the long distance. Long distance means the group present into the one area. Example is the anti-pituitary, the growth hormone, which is secreted from the somatotrophs of the anti-pituitary. And this anti-pituitary, once the growth hormone is secreted, it is targeting to all parts of the body. So very long distance is there. It is specifically of the target cells. The all the hormones, the specific target cells are available. They are exposing cells which are available for that particular hormone, only they are functioning. It is a slow and long lasting response. It is control activities of long duration. Now the endocrine system is particularly the control activities. Control activities means it is controlling the growth of the individual, growth of the tissue. It is controlling the reproductive functions. It is controlling the metabolic activity of the body. And it is controlling the water and electrolyte regulation of the body. So for all these functions, there are the various hormones. Various hormones are there for the growth of the individual, the growth of the infant, growth of the children, and growth during the puberty. The growth hormone is required, and that's why this hormone is particularly responsible for the growth of the all the tissues in the body. One is the growth hormone, and growth hormone is targeting almost all the cells of the few tissues that I will tell you in the growth hormone in detail. And There is a reproductive function. The new generation comes. The testosterone in the male, estrogen, progesterone, the human chorionic gonadotropin after the fertilization of the ovum. There is a some other hormones are there responsible for the maintenance of the pregnancy. The hormone which is responsible for duration delivery of the baby, that is known as the oxytocin. The thyroid hormone is the most important hormone over here for regulating the metabolism. That means the utilization of the nutrients and production of the waste in the body, and ultimately it is passed out of the oxygen and producing of the carbon dioxide. So metabolic activity, that is producing the waste and the heat, and there is 37-degree temperature, and this body temperature has to be maintained all the time. Cells of the body will function physiologically within that limit only. So when the temperature falls, the thyroid hormone level is increases because the either the internal environment low temperature will target into the higher centers, or the external environmental which to the receptors sending the information to the higher centers, increase the metabolic activity and increases the heat in the body, and that is the reverse in the whenever the environmental. The water in electrolyte, the water is responsible for the electrolyte is also responsible, like particularly the sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. These are the electrolytes which are responsible for the maintenance of the different functions of the body. So this water in electrolyte is regulated by the from the adrenal cortex, and water the antipituitary, postpituitary, that is the antidiuretic hormone. So the amount of water volume and amount of concentration of substances should be remain in the plasma within a within the limit in concentration. The example is the sodium. Sodium has to be around 150-155 milliequivalent per liter, and potassium has to be 4 to 5 milliequivalent per liter. So if the sodium concentration is increases, then what will happen? It will hold more water, and ultimately blood volume is increases, and that will lead to the increases the blood pressure, and ultimately that will go increases the uh, disadvantage of the different functions of the bodies. So similarities and differences. What are the similarities? This endocrine, the nervous system, they are the system use the chemicals. Same chemicals means there is a example is the epinephrine. Epinephrine which is secreted, say the epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine also, the catecholamines. These catecholamines, they are secreted at the end of the neuron and diffused into the plasma. Similarities of these molecules, their molecules are functioning. The epinephrine, norepinephrine act onto the particularly feedback when it is this. You say the oxytocin is, you say the growth hormone releasing hormone. There is a negative feedback mechanism in this case. The nervous system and among cells and the tissue system is very quick, long distance wherever the fibers are there. The fibers are there, only there is a response occur. whether the response or not, even though the molecules are exposed to the tissues. Comparison. What is the comparison is there? The nervous system comparison. It communicates with the electrical impulses that already you know the synapses, chemical synapses, electrical synapses, synapses, neurotransmitters. System is reacts very quickly, 1 to 10 milliseconds between the neuron to neuron. That is to stops quickly when stimulus stops. So the response is very fast. The response finishes also very fast. Adapts relatively quickly to continual stimulation. So it depends upon that how the stimulus comes and how the response comes. Depend upon that it continues. Suppose the sensory receptors, the cold receptors are there. Cold environment is cold. You can say the 20-degree temperature. Then the cold receptors are stimulated and immediately they send the impulses to the central nervous system to the hypothalamus, and it starts the secreting of the thyroid hormone releasing hormone, and ultimately the thyroid hormone is secreted, but that response comes slowly. It is a local specific and target organ. So the nervous system is the local part, other part, and it is very specific. Wherever the nerve fibers are ending, then only the response to that particular. Suppose the nervous so the nerve fiber which is ending to the particular skeletal muscle, only that muscle is responding. The other muscles are not responding. The endocrine system, it communicates through the blood and tissues are there. So it takes a very long duration or from seconds, minutes to many days, and it continue to respond till the molecules are available into the plasma. So even though the secretion stops, but when the molecules are available into the plasma, still the response comes. So this response is continually for days to weeks, sometimes it years also, and it is a widespread to many organs of the body. Hormone. Now, hormone is any member, or you can say the member of a class of signaling molecule. The group of the molecules are there which are classified, and these molecules are produced from the multicellular glands in a multicellular organisms, particularly in the vertebrates, and that are transported by the circulatory system to target distant organs to regulate the physiology and behavior. So the main function of this hormone is to regulate the physiological functions of all parts of the body and to communicate socially and environmentally with the good behavior. Now, these molecules, this hormone, this is the definition. This hormone is a member of a class of signaling molecules. This, these molecules are classified uh, into groups, various groups. The amine group, peptide group is there. Uh, the amine group, the protein in nature, the peptide group, the amine group, it is the amino acids, the chain of the amino acids, uh, the chain communicating between organs and tissues for physiological regulation and behavioral activity. So they are particularly communicating to different parts of the body. Now, this chemical classification, that is, these are the amines, proteins, and steroids. Amines. These molecules, if they are classified into amine group, is a single or few amino acids, 7, 8, or 9 amino acids. Number of amino acids are very less soluble. The example is the epinephrine. Thyroxine is the insoluble, but epinephrine is a soluble. The other hormones are also, we'll see in detail. And the melatonin also water soluble. So amine, the hormones which are in the amino groups, they are few amino acids. You can say the ADH. So this the protein in nature hormones, they are the short or long chain uh, amino, maybe 80, maybe 150 number of amino acids. Long chain is there, and they are also water soluble. The examples are the growth hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, glucagon, insulin, and the hormones which are synthesized from the steroids. The cholesterol is required for the synthesis. They are insoluble, water insoluble is there, and these are the hormones: estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, cortisol, and aldosterone, because they are from the cholesterol. So the hormones which are protein chain is there, long amino acid chain is there. These are water soluble, and hormones which are synthesized low density LDL from the LDL, they are the insoluble in water. Now this is the in detail what will happen, how they are synthesized, whether they are stored, what about their solubility, where the receptors are available, how the receptors are functioning, what are their effects, and the examples. Now, these three groups of these hormones are there: the peptides, steroids, and amino acid. Peptide is a long chain, the cholesterol, and amino acid is a very short. So now, now first we'll see the synthesis. This peptide hormones, they are synthesized from the amino acids. Long chain is there. Initially, particularly in the endoplasmic reticulum, synthesize initial stage known as the prohormones, and then it is matured in the Golgi apparatus known as the mature hormones, or you can say the hormones. So whenever the number of amino acids are arranged in a short chain to make the long chain for the particular hormone, as RRNS and tRNS. So it is hormone, then prohormone, then a mature hormone. Steroid hormone, they are synthesized from a cholesterol, and the number of enzymes are required for that. We'll see in the adrenal cortical. You can say the aldosterone. You can say the sex steroid. Estrogen. The amino acid. These a few amino acids are required. The thyroid hormone. You can see the synthesis from tyrosine. Tyrosine is the important amino acid, and from the tyrosine, the thyroid hormone is synthesized, and the catecholamines are also tyrosine. The peptide hormones, the long amino acid chain, they are stored in vesicles. Uh, these vesicles, they are cytoplasm, and whenever the signal comes, only it will be secreted. Unless and until they will be remain into the uh, cell itself. The example is the insulin. I give only one example. Here, many examples are there at the bottom. The insulin. Insulin is synthesized by the beta cells. So whenever the glucose is exposed, the beta cells, they are synthesizing the insulin, and insulin is stored in the form of granules. So whenever there is a next time, or whenever level is increasing again in the plasma, then these granules are secreted and insulin is available. Hormones released immediately. So whenever there is a synthesis of the hormone, it will not be stored. It will be released immediately. You can say the testosterone, you can say the estrogen, you can say the glucocorticoid, the hormones. It is not stored into the cytoplasm. It will, the molecule is mature. diffused passively into the plasma. So ultimately, it will remain whenever the synthesis is going on continuously. It will remain in higher concentration in the plasma. Hormones, their secretion is once they are synthesized, whenever signal comes, then it is secreted. So this type of secretion is known as the regulatory secretion, and the hormone but does not store passively diffused into the plasma, known as the constitutive secretion. Amino acid, the few amino acids, you can say the tyrosine, stored before release. Storage mechanism is varies. It depends upon that the uh, storage of these hormones are there. Example is the thyroid hormone. The thyroid hormone synthesized for the thyroid hormone is required. The tyrosine is required many things to mature the thyroid hormone. So the raw material is the tyrosine, but whenever this tyrosine is used for thyroid hormone synthesis, the iodine is required, the thyroglobulin is required, many other molecules required. So mechanism is different. The example is the uh, catecholamine also. The epinephrine will see adrenal medulla. The solubility, the peptide hormones, they are water soluble. They are polar. The most of them are polar with the polar bodies, and they are water soluble into the blood. The steroid hormones generally non-polar and require carrier proteins to travel in the blood. Now, these carrier proteins, they alone they are not traveling into the bloodstream. The example is the cortisol. It estrogen. It requires the plasma protein. Cortisol. It requires the plasma protein. And this plasma protein is synthesized. So these plasma proteins, once it is synthesized in the liver, if liver is producing enough plasma protein concentration, then only this hormone is. So whenever there is a liver disease occurs, the effect occurs onto this concentration of this hormone and their relative functions are there. These amino acid derivatives, they are the polar. Some of them are polar, and the others must be bound. So either it is binding, it is not binding, depends on that. Receptors, the receptors for the peptide hormones, the molecules, the hormones, they are bind, and these receptors are available onto the cell membrane and transduce the signal via use this second messenger system. So second messenger system means the certain number of molecules are available onto the cell membrane. This hormone molecule is binding with the, and then the hormone does not enter into the cytoplasm, but the hormone is activating the process of those receptors into the cell membrane, and these molecules they are changing the environment of the cytoplasm, and further functions will go on. Either it is the synthesis function, either it is the enzyme producing function, either it is the protein pumps are functions are functions are depend upon that how many receptors are there and how many hormones depend upon that. Steroid hormones bind to intracellular receptors to change gene express directly. So for these type of the hormones, the hormone known as the steroid hormones, they do not have the receptors onto the cell membrane, but these steroid hormones like estrogen, progesterone, corticoid, they enter in cytoplasm, they cross the cell membrane, and their receptors are available into the cell cytoplasm, and there it binds with these receptors, and then these changes will occur that will lead to the enter into the nucleoplasm and target to the gene particularly. So gene expression will other functions of the cell and other molecules like enzymes, like channels, other functions of the density of the cell membrane. So the amino acid, the adrenaline acts on membrane receptor. Here these are the amino acid derivatives. They are binding with the membranes receptors. So the receptors are available on the cell. smooth muscle cells, or either it is a. And amino acid, the thyroid hormone is also synthesized in this group, is that it directly act onto the nuclear receptor. So thyroid hormone is entering through the cell membrane to the cytoplasm, then enter into the nucleoplasm, and then directly target to the receptors which are present into the nucleus. Effects, uh, the peptide hormones, it is a very fast transient changes, protein activity, the gene expression occurs immediately and can change immediately, all the functions are there. So example is the, again I'm giving you the example of the insulin. Insulin is binding with the insulin receptor either onto the skeletal muscle or adipose tissue. So this will cause to the immediate changing to the internal environment of the particular cells, and that will cause to the blood glucose level. So immediate changes are there. So whenever the blood is in the plasma, another 1.5 or 2 hours, the blood glucose level. The examples are the cortisol, aldosterone. Already I have explained you. Amino acids, these are the adrenaline and thyroid hormones are there. Now, what are the steps of the biosynthesis? What are the steps for the hormone synthesis? Number one is the biosynthesis. It has to be synthesized. Directly the molecules are not available either through the diet or either after the is whatever the nutrients are available, and from that nutrients the particular target tissue is particular using the particular hormone is that the amino acid growth hormone synthesis. The cholesterol is required for the testosterone or estrogen. Tyrosine is required for the catecholamines and the thyroid hormone synthesis. Now, the first step is the biosynthesis. Once the hormone has to be synthesized. Second is it has to be stored, and whenever the signal comes or whenever the requirement is there, then it has to be secreted. And after the secretion, the hormone has to be transported through the vehicle, through the bloodstream, has to be target tissues. So either protein or freely transporting into the plasma with water soluble. Now, once the transportation occurs, whenever the at the end, when the capillary in the capillary region, the molecule enters into the exposure to the cell membrane of the different tissue. So that cell membrane has to recognize these molecules. Molecule is by receptors. If the molecule is exposed to the certain tissue and that tissue does not require that molecule, then it will not function over there. So either it is required or the intracellular receptors, wherever the receptors are present, has to be available over. Relay and amplification via signal transduction, that is the already you have studied the G protein, GSGI, Q, all these processes, through these processes, the hormone is functioning. That also we'll see in detail whenever we study the hormones. Now, this hormone, after either it is function with the tissue or if it is not functioning, the breakdown occurs of this hormone. If the hormone is binding with the receptors, then hormone life is over. But if the hormone does not bind with the receptors because the receptor is not available whenever it is circulated into the circulation and it is exposed to the liver tissue or the kidney tissue, then it will be broken down. So that lifespan is over. So the lifespan is more of the hormones when it is binding with the binding protein. And lifespan is less of the hormone is not binding with the binding proteins and or it is a water soluble. So example already I have given to you that antidiuretic hormone ADH is 25 to 30 minutes because it is not binding with any protein structures. The thyroid hormone T4, thyroxine, it is binding with the binding protein and it around 7 to 10 days. Now hormone secretion can be stimulated or and inhibited. So hormone secretion either it or decreases by many factors. So the the stimulation occurs of one hormone by another hormone, or inhibition also to another hormone. So either the one hormone is increases the secretion of the other hormone, so that is known as the stimulating hormone, or releasing. Higher centers, it is a releasing hormone, so it helps to release that hormone. And some of the hormones are there which are released but inhibiting the other hormone. That means it is not allowing the other hormone to release. Example is the so whenever the blood plasma glucose level is rising, the insulin secretion is occurs. So plasma concentration of insulin is increases, but this insulin is inhibiting the glucagon secretion, which increases the blood plasma level. So both are inhibiting to each other. So the example is the releasing hormone, the growth hormone releasing hormone, which is secreted from the hypothalamic neurons, and this hormone is stimulating the secretion of the growth hormone from anterior pituitary. So releasing hormones from the hypothalamus, and then it is targeting to the anterior pituitary and causing the stimulation of those neurons, and helps for synthesis and secretion of the other hormones. So growth hormone release stimulating the secretion, synthesis and the secretion of the growth hormone. The plasma concentration uh, of ions or nutrients, as well as binding globulin. Here also the plasma, the minerals. Example is the sodium, potassium, calcium. These are also responsible for the hormone secretion or inhibition. Either the nutrients, either it is a nutrients or it is a ions. The example is the sodium concentration. The sodium concentration, whenever it is rising, the aldosterone secretion is decreases. The concentration is decreases around 20% of its normal value, then the aldosterone secretion increases. I have given the about the nutrients, the plasma glucose level already I have given. The calcium concentration, the calcium concentration is decreases, the parathyroid hormone and vitamin D level is increases. But when the calcium concentration is increases, these two hormones concentration is decreasing in the plasma, and calcitonin concentration is increasing. Neurons and mental activity. So these hormones, they are also influencing to the different neurons in the brain, and because of they are acting onto the different neurons in the brain, their neurotransmitters, either it is secreted or either it is increase their secretion of the neurotransmitter or decrease of that neurotransmitter, depend upon that what the hormone is targeting. That will change the mood of the individual, and that mood means it is a mental activity. So mental activity is depends upon the internal and external environmental situation. So that internal environmental situation is influencing to the secretion of the hormones, and external effect is that secretion of the hormone to the different parts of the brain, and that change to the mental activity, and that will lead to the behavior of the individual. So environmental changes, the particularly we are exposed to the light and the temperature. This light and the temperature is also exposed to our body. So light is secreting the melatonin, and the temperature, body temperature 37 has to be maintained. So temperature is increases or decreases, it affects onto the thyroid hormone synthesis and the secretion, and not only as well as the internal environment, but external environment is also influencing to the uh, thyroid hormone synthesis and secretion. So thyroid hormone secretion is more when there is a winter season is there, and thyroid hormone secretion is less when there is a summer season. Now this is the example that I was telling you. The two diagrams are there, the steroid hormones and the protein hormones. You can see these are the orange in color is a hormone, and this hormone these are the steroid hormone example. So it is entering into the cell through the cell membrane and the nucleoplasm, nucleoplasm. Here, this is the cell membrane is there, enter into the cell membrane, enter into the cytoplasm, and there, this is the green structure is there. This is receptor of that steroid hormone. So this hormone is binding with the receptor, and that it changes into the cell body. Ultimately, whether either it has to be secreted, or either it has to be enhanced of this further hormone, or it is inhibiting to that hormone. That depends upon that. And whenever the protein in nature, either the amines or proteins, these are the molecules of the hormones. They have the receptors onto the cell membrane there. These are the receptors are there. It depends upon the number of receptors. The density is the higher side or the lower side. Depend upon that, the function of the cell will occur. Now this protein molecules are binding with the receptors, and these receptor with the receptor, this molecule of the hormone does not enter into the cytoplasm through the cell membrane, but the conformational change takes place onto these receptors, and ultimately this conformational change will cause to the another protein structure change into the cytoplasm, and ultimately it will enhance the function of. So now what are the effects are there? Just before 1 minute. Just a minute. I'm searching one slide. Yes. Now this is the slide you can see. Uh, there are the number of cells are available in the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and these are the different tissues. Tissue number 1, 2, 3. Now this is the area which is the blood plasma level in which the many molecules are available. Here these molecules are representing as a hormone. Now tissue number 1. Tissue number 1 does not have any receptors, but these hormone molecules are targeting to this tissue number 1, which is not required for its own function for any hormones. So that means these molecules of the hormones are targeting tissue number 1, but these molecules, even though they are targeting, the cell is not able to utilize. So that means it is a wasted exposure or wasted transportation. So the molecules are exposed, the blood is circulated, it is exposed to the, but the tissue does not require. Now tissue number 2, this is the receptor, and the black, this molecule is required for the tissue number 2. So you can see in the circulation, the molecules are available into the tissue. So these many hormones are targeting to the tissue number 2, but only the particular hormone is required for other hormones are also passing through this, but the other hormones does not require by tissue number 2. Tissue number 2 is required only these molecules. So these molecules are not only binding. That means the tissue is recognizing their own molecule. So this tissue have a one type of receptors, only one. Tissue number 3 has got many types of receptor. So many types of receptor means the one type of hormone is the other type of hormone is also able to bind. Now you can see these circles are there. These are the circle. Two circles are available. That means concentration of the hormone is number 3. But the inverted triangle, this is the only one inverted triangle, means the concentration of that hormone is less for the tissue number 3. So depend upon that, which concentration of the hormone is more, the tissue will respond accordingly. So tissue will respond more this hormone, but it less with this receptor. Tissue number 4 have a receptor, but there is no hormone is available into the circulation. So the tissue number 4 will not function because the concerned hormone is not available for this. So tissue number 1 is functioning without hormone. Tissue number 4 have a receptor, but no hormone is available. Tissue number 5, you can see tissue number 5. This is the other tissue, the same type of hormone which is required for the tissue number 3. The same hormone is required for the other tissue, which is a different tissue than number 3, tissue number 5. So tissue number 5 is required on one, which is required for the tissue number 3, only that hormone. And the other tissue is there which is require the hormone, the same hormone which is required by the tissue number 3. So one tissue is there in the body, it needs more than 2 hormones to function, but the same hormone has got the for the different hormones are there. So this is what I'm going to tell you. So the whenever the hormone is circulating to the different tissues, either the tissue does not have the receptor, either the hormone is not available. The one tissue have one type. The one tissue have many types of the receptors, but the same type of the receptor and same type of hormone for the other tissue have a separate tissues are available. Now, what are the effects of the hormone? Listen, आवाज आ रही है आपको? Yes. Now, what are the effects of the hormone? These hormones have a many effect onto the body. So main effect is the stimulation or inhibition of the growth. So there is a different phases of the stimulation for the growth hormone secretion. So either it is a stimulatory effect or it is the effect of the hormone onto the bodies depend on the sleep, wake sleep cycle and other circadian rhythm. Wake sleep 12 hours to dark and 12 hours to light, and that light bombardment is also depend on the uh, how the secretion of the melatonin is there or how the light is entering into the brain, different neurons into the brain. The mood swings, the depend on the day-to-day activity or the full day activity. The morning mood is different, the evening mood is different. But an environment, the our inputs they are changing. If there is summer season is there, then what will happen? The continuous bombardment is there of the higher temperature from the external environment, and that will cause to try to that will change our mood. So same on the winter side, same on the summer, and depend upon the day. It means we are hungry and not able to get the food in time, or we are getting the food but not even it is a tasty. So our mood. Other examples are there. There is a examination. 1 week time is given. You need 2-3 weeks or 1 month time is there for the examination. So depend upon that. Or the another example is the you have prepared everything, most of the things are there, but the question is asked in the examination which you have not prepared. So again that there will be changing in the brain activity. Different types of the neurotransmitters are secreted, and that neurotransmitters are affecting to our behavior, and ultimately the our mood will be accordingly. Induction or suppression of apoptosis. Most of the almost all the cells in the body they are programmed. And apoptosis already you have learned in the initial classes. So program cell death. So cells, they are dying slowly. Example is the red blood cell. 120 days of time is there. Time limit is there. So like that, the program cell death. So there is the depend on all the skeletal muscle or liver cells or the stomach cell. The organ wise, there is a age is depending on this program cell death. So the age, the apoptosis will start of the cells, and ultimately what will happen after when the cell is functioning less, which is the performance. So ultimately, that will slowly decreases the function system. We have a defense systems in the body. Also, us from the different internally or externally. So these hazards, this hormonal system is particularly help them to into the body. So the certain examples are there. You can say the glucocorticoid. So glucocorticoid is increases the number of or anti-inflammatory tissues. So anti-inflammatory actions means it is preventing the damage of the tissue more and more. So inflammation is occurs, it is decreases the inflammation. So there is a mechanism is there of this that will study the glucocorticoid. So either it is activating or either it is inhibiting. The other system, the glucocorticoid is inhibiting whenever there is a mutation is there. So tissue transplantation, this recognizing of the self and non-self. So the tissue is or our body tissue is recognizing when there is a tissue transplantation, try to recognize the self and non-self, and ultimately what will happen? If it is a non-self is there, then immediately the immune system cells try to remove those tissue is there. So glucocorticoid is helping them to anti-inflammatory activity, suppress T cell, the either helper T cell, suppressor T cell, memory T cell, cytotoxic T cells, and the externally also the glucocorticoid is given to system. Regulation of metabolism is regulated by the hormones. The insulin is there continuously to the metabolism that will study in the insulin and that will study in the thyroid hormone. Preparation of the body for mating. There is a varieties of hormones are will help for the first individual. The first is the maturation of all the body parts. Body in the puberty, it is maturing the reproductive parts, and these reproductive parts, once they are maturing, they are releasing. That will help for the neuronal activity up to the individual, and ultimately that will help for the mating activity. So particularly seen in the animal. Then there is a another behavior is that there is a fighting behavior. Fighting behavior to survival into the environment. It also you can see into the uh, animals and fleeing that both are related with the adrenal cortical hormones. Both are related with the adrenal that we'll see the fighting and fleeing. Fighting means to fight with the enemy and finish it. Fleeing means to run away from the enemy and other activities. So that is other activities means not only the mating, but it is a the maternal behavior is there. It is a parental activity is there. These are the activities also. The hormones are prepare the body. Now preparation of the body for a new phase of life with puberty, parenting, and menopause is there. Menopause means there is a complete cessation of the menstrual cycle. Control of reproductive cycle. How the control of reproductive cycle? That is particularly the example is the menstrual cycle, the pre-ovulatory phase, These are the two different phases. The number fixed 7 to 8 days in the pre-ovulatory pre-ovulatory is 14 days and remaining 14 days. So pre-ovulatory, this estrogen, progesterone is secreted more than the progesterone, and post-ovulatory phase there is a progesterone is secreted more than the estrogen. So these numbers, they secrete the concentration of the hormone to prepare the uterine walls to accept the fertile ovum to implant. So this cycle is continuously goes on, and ultimately what will happen if there is a fertile ovum is not available, then this menstruation cycle starts. The hunger craving, that depends upon the nutrients are available into the body. That nutrients are, you can say, the glucose, protein, and there is the carbohydrate, proteins, and the fat that is required for the functions of the body. So protein is required, glucose is required, the fat is required for the different functions and development and functions of the uh, are there. And sexual arousal that depend upon the concentration of the hormone into the blood plasma, particularly the testosterone. The testosterone is increases continuously into the plasma after the puberty, and that will change the neuronal activity, lead to the further activity to the hypothalamic tissue. What are the hormone actions are? All the hormones. Many are doing, one or two may not do, but overall you can say the whether the activity of the cell function either increases or it is growth and development, variation in body mass and its composition. Now, control of growth and development, that is the growth during the infancy, growth during the adolescence, growth during the puberty, and development. Development means it is a particular body structure figure is developed accordingly. It does not mean that the one part of the body is increased, the other part does not increase. The alteration in body mass and composition, that is depend upon that how much of the volume of adipose tissue is there in the body. Suppose the person is taking food, and ultimately what will happen? Amount of which is required for their survival, the energy is utilized, but the extra energy taken, it will be deposited for the further whenever. So whenever the person, that's why the in the puberty and another till the age of 20-25, the amount of nutrients are increased in the plasma by, but it does not store it because BMR is higher and ultimately it will be utilized. 25 or 30, the BMR is decreases and the same volume will be deposited into the body, and this deposition is number one. Whenever there is emergency comes, it will be utilized, or if emergency does not comes, then it will continue deposited and then it will be a problem in the near future. So adipose tissue increases, it may lead to the increase the blood pressure, it may lead to increase the cholesterol level, and ultimately the new disadvantages situation will come. Reproductive functions, so hormones are uh, required for the reproductive function. Here the production of the hormone, production of the testosterone, genesis, it depends on the hormone. The digestion, the GIT hormones are required. Utilization, that is the require of the thyroid hormone for different tissues in the waste products. And storage, the insulin is required for the storage of the nutrients. Regulation of volume and composition, the certain hormones are continuously to maintaining the blood volume around 5 liters of the blood, and this 5 liter of blood is maintaining for the blood pressure functions of the body. So this blood pressure will depend on the glucose, depend on the sodium, depend on the potassium, and calcium is there. Suppose glucose has to be as a normal side is there. So after the food is digested, the food is absorbed, the glucose is absorbed, the blood glucose level is increases. And increases, it it will hold more water. And when the blood side, the insulin is also secreted, and that insulin is helping the removing plasma to the different tissues. So blood glucose level comes down. Whenever the blood glucose level comes down, the volume of the blood is decreased because the water is passing into the uh, renal system. So ultimately, the blood volume comes down, and then ultimately the pressure is also maintained. But in diabetic patient, what will happen? Blood glucose level is increases. So volume is increases, blood pressure is increases. And ultimately, it will cause situation for the individual. This already I have explained in senescence. In the old age, the hormone effects are in senescence. That means the concentration of the hormone is secretion is decreases below normal, and most of the hormones are below normal, and ultimately does not affect into the different parts of the tissue. Ultimately, it will lead to the situation known as the senescence. In senescence, the physiological activities of the individual is decreases. Now, what are these hormones? The hormones are chemical substances secreted by cells into the extracellular fluid. These are all the chemical substances. Since it is not available through the diet, or it is not available, it is synthesized from the nutrients by the group of the cells which are residing into the different areas of the body, different parts of the body, and these different glandular cells, they are depend on the functions of the other glandular cells, or there are the sensory inputs are there, whether the neuronal system or whether to the internal environmental system. So secreted into the extracellular fluid, they regulate the metabolic functions of the other cells. So all metabolic activities are regulated by the hormones, have a length seconds to hours. So these are the characteristics of the hormones. A few seconds to few minutes to hours and to days and effect. So till the hormone concentration is available into the plasma, it depends upon whether they are the free form or whether they are the in the bound form. Circulate to all the tissues, but only activate cells. So all the hormones are all the tissues, but the tissue is required which type of the hormone, only that will be referred to a target tissue. Target cells must be specific hormones, and that only can bind with the hormone. These receptors are maybe intracellular, that is the steroid hormones and thyroid hormone, and or they are located on the plasma membrane. These are the protein in nature, these hormones. Now, what are the properties? Properties of the hormones? They are biosynthesized. They are synthesized into the body. Ready-made molecules are not available, and they are operating very small in concentration in the blood. 10 raised to 10 minus 12 to 10 to minus in nanopico gram is available. Very few, very low concentration they are available, but they work very nicely to the body. They have a short half-life, depend upon that whether it is the free form or whether it is the bound form is there. Often that multi-point control. So many systems are targeting to the one secreting organs, and ultimately that will help them to either the synthesize or secretion, mainly the synthesis. Example is the beta cells of the pancreas. The beta cells of the pancreas is the most important exposure to insulin secretion, but not only the glucose, but amino acid is also helping the insulin secretion. The GIT hormones is also stimulating the insulin secretion. There are the sympathetic and parasympathetic activity. The sympathetic activity is also increasing the insulin secretion, and certain they are also helping the insulin secretion. So multi control system is there, and these all the target cells they have pre-programmed to respond. So pre-programmed means the receptors are already available and waiting for that particular molecule as a hormone to come and bind, and then They have a feedback regulating system. Either they have a themselves regulating the hormone, or their products are regulating, or their functions are regulating, or the central nervous system is upon that the hormone molecule itself, or uh, stimulating the further release of the hormone, or the hormone is functioning to the target tissue, their target tissue, or the function of that cell of the target tissue, that function will inhibit the release of the hormone, or the various inputs to the central nervous system that will try to release or inhibiting of the hormones. All these learn one by one. Shall we continue? Okay, classification of the hormone. This classification depend on the receptor properties, the group 1 and 2. The group 1 and group 2, they are classified depend on their receptor properties. Receptor properties, that means the receptors are available onto the cell, either in the cell membrane, or so depend upon that where the receptors are available, depend upon that the number of molecules of that particular hormone is targeted. So in group 1, which hormone comes? Hormone that bind to intracellular receptors. So hormone, the receptors are in either in the cytoplasm or in the nucleoplasm or in the nuclear membrane. So these group of hormones onto the cell membrane. They have in the cytoplasm or nucleus. Are the hormones are there? Glucocorticoid or cortisol, you can say, estrogen, progesterone or progestin, androgen, vitamin D, thyroid, retinoic acid. They does not have the receptors onto the cell membrane. And group 2, they have the receptor onto the cell membrane. So group 2 is again further classified into group A, group 2A, group 2, group 2C, group 2C dash, and group T. They are classified into the 5 groups. So the receptors are available onto the cell membranes, are classified into group 2, and group 2 is classified again subgroups of 5 groups: group A, group B, group C, group C dash, and group D. Now group 2A, the second messenger is cyclic A, the hormones which are binding with the receptors, and these receptors, the concentration of cyclic AMP. Cyclic AMP is further functioning, that we'll see in the next class. So the hormone is bind with the receptors, and this receptors is increases cyclic AMP. These hormones are comes under to group A. These are the antidiuretic hormone, glucagon, beta-adrenergic catecholamine, somatostatin, and opioids. So these are group A, the hormones which are increasing the cyclic AMP. The hormones which are by and increases the concentration of IP3, inositol triphosphate, and diethylglycerol DAG, the hormones which are binding the receptors and increases the concentration of IP3 and DAG, group 2B, and these are the hormones is now oxytocin to alpha adrenergic catecholamines. So these are the hormones. Group C, the hormones bind with the receptors, and receptors is the tyrosine activity. So this tyrosine kinase protein activity increases with receptors, or you can say the intracellular messenger if it is unknown, because this protein kinase activity, this tyrosine activity, that is the molecule is binding with the this molecule is available on the cell membrane, that will send tyrosine protein kinase activity occurs. So when the tyrosine protein kinase activity occurs, these hormones comes under group 2C. These are the insulin and the growth factors. Group 2C days, the cell surface receptor recruits the soluble tyrosine kinase. The soluble tyrosine kinases, these are the enzymes recruits into the cell surface when the hormone exposure to this particular growth hormone in detail. And 2D, the second messenger, when the hormone is binding with the receptor and receptor is increases the cyclic GMP activity, that hormone comes under to these atrial peptide. The receptors are available on the cell cytoplasm receptor if the hormone is functioning to the cell. These receptor system is known as the second messenger system. Then how the synthesis occurs? Already I have told you about and regulatory pathway. Now this is the particular cell is there. Here you can see the Golgi apparatus, and here you can see the secondary synthesis step. This is what will happen in the Golgi apparatus. The molecules are synthesized, stored in the form of granules. And whenever the information comes or whenever the signal comes, this will be secreted into the plasma, into the so when once the molecule is synthesized, stored, and when signal comes, only it will be secreted. Here you can see the signal such as hormone or neurotransmitter. Then the intracellular secreting pathway goes to increase the transportation of this granules towards the cell membrane, and then it is secreted. It is a secretory path. Now here you can see the secretory pathway whenever the and when it is mature, it does not store into the cell membrane, into the cytoplasm, and then it is simply passively diffused into the plasma body fluid. So ultimately what will happen? The signal is not required for this. Now how long? How much time is required for the synthesis and their secretion and at each stage? This is the definition about the regulated and the constitutive pathway. The regulated pathway I have shown you over here, the regulated pathway and constitutive pathway both are here. Before we see the timing, we'll see the definition. What is regulatory secretory pathway? A process of, because I have written here, if suppose some students are not able to get my properly, then they can read it also. A process of exocytosis in which soluble protein and other substances are initially stored in secretory vesicle for later release. Later release means the signal is required. Whenever the signal comes, then only it will be secreted. The example is the insulin. Whenever the plasma glucose between the two successive meals, the plasma glucose level is at the basal level. During that particular environmental situation, the insulin does not require to secrete, but the beta cell is continuously synthesizing the molecule of the insulin and stored in the form of granule. But whenever the food is taken by the individual, some the absorption of glucose concentration increase in the plasma that exposed to the beta cell, and that will lead to the increase of constitutive pathway, a secretory pathway found in all cells by which the transport vesicle continuously leave the Golgi apparatus and with the plasma membrane there, and their contents are exported to the extracellular fluid. That means the synthesis, but they are not stored into the cytoplasm. Whenever the concentration is rising, simply or passively it is diffused into the body fluid. Example is the glucocorticoid, you can say the cortisol, or you can or estrogen or progesterone. So for they are synthesized, but stored signal is not required for them. Whenever their concentration is rising into the cell cytoplasm, immediately it will be diffused into the plasma. So here you can see the timings. The endoplasmic reticulum, whenever the signal comes, it will take the endoplasmic reticulum for the particular. Then it will be secondarily, it will be start synthesizing into the Golgi apparatus. It takes 30 to 40 minutes. Below here it is written 10 to 15 minutes. The signal peptide cleavage, that is the biochemical synthesis required. I think you must have learned in the biochemistry. The phosphorylation occurs in the Golgi apparatus, and then it is primarily it is in the Golgi, and then secondary it is maturing these molecules into the Golgi apparatus, and then if the molecule is protein in nature, then it will be till the till the signal comes, and ultimately it will be released. So it takes 2 hours of time, and then the release is continuously for many days. It is required till the exposure of that signal is continuously going on. Example is the follicle stimulating hormone for days. The example is for the days, the follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, it continuously increases in the plasma, and that continuously targeting to the ovarian tissue at the testicle. It continuously increases the concentration of the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone in the plasma, so that continues to grow of those tissues are there, and continuously to for many days. Many days means 7 days, 8 days, or growth hormone is for many years, 2 years, 3, but approximately 4 years time period is there, so that growth hormone continuously for many years. Now, how the hormone synthesis takes place? The hormone, there are the stages are there. Depend upon that, the initial signal comes when the signal peptide hormones are synthesized in both the endoplasmic reticulum, rough and the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. The steroid hormones into smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and protein in nature, amine in nature, synthesized into the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Those hormones which are synthesized from the amino acids, protein in nature, synthesized into the rough endoplasmic. Initial stages, whenever the signal comes, and the pre-pro hormone, then it is synthesized in the form of pro hormone, stored into the Golgi apparatus, and then packaged into the form of granules known as the hormone. So mature molecules, form of granules known as the hormone. Now, pre-pro hormone, you can say the example is the growth hormone, pre-pro growth hormone, pro growth hormone, and then mature hormone. So like that, you can put the name of all these things, all the hormones, pre-pro particular hormone, then pro particular hormone, and then mature hormone. Now, regulation of hormone secretion. This hormone secretion, it is regulated by feedback control system. There are the two types of feedback control system. One is the simple and one is the complex. Simple, that I'll show you the diagram. One is the negative, the other one is the positive feedback mechanism. That you know about the negative feedback mechanism. Once the hormone level is increases, that will for itself. And positive feedback mechanism, once the hormone level, hormone concentration is increases, it will increase the further secretion. Now, in negative feedback mechanism, there is a simple and the complex feedback control. You can see over here, the left hand side, there is a simple negative feedback mechanism. First, we'll see the endocrine gland. Endocrine gland, there is a group of the glandular cells which secrete the hormone. And this hormone is target organs, and target organs is producing the biological effect. Biological effect is many, either it is a growth or conversion of the new molecules, the heat, or certain other molecules which are required to the different parts of the body. And this is the negative feedback mechanism in the right hand side. You can see this hypothalamus is a master gland. Hypothalamus containing the neurons, the endocrine function of the hypothalamus. These neurons are releasing the hormones. These neurons are known as the releasing neurons, and their product is known as the releasing hormones. And the product which is inhibiting to the other hormones known as the inhibiting hormones. Now, this hypothalamic hormone target to the anti-pituitary. So, anti-pituitary function is increases their trophic cells. In the anti-pituitary, there are the group of the cells are known present over there. These are known as the trophic cells, and these trophic cells is accepting the certain molecules which is released from the hypothalamus. These are known as the somatotrophs, thyrotropes, gonadotropes, leptotropes. These are the group of the trophic cells are there. So somatotrophs are activated by the growth hormone, releasing hormone, and growth hormone inhibiting hormone. And this hormone is target to the this trophic hormone. This target gland is further secreting the target gland hormone. Now, suppose we take the example of the thyroid hormone. So, thyroid hormone releasing hormone secreted by the act on the anterior pituitary to the trophic cells known as the thyrotropes. And thyrotropes release the thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone is act onto the thyroid gland cells, and thyroid gland cell is secreting the thyroid hormone. And thyroid hormone is targeting to the different tissues for the physiological effect. Physiological effect increase the body temperature. So temperature is increase the heat production. Now this once the temperature is rising, it will inhibit, or the T3 T4 level is increases, it will inhibit the thyroid gland itself. Thyroid gland, the T3 T4, once it is released from thyroid gland cells, it will inhibit the pituitary gland cells, it will inhibit the hypothalamic neurons, and the thyroid stimulating hormone is also inhibit the hypothalamus. Now these are the different loops are there. Now one is the ultra short loop. Ultra short loop means hypothalamus is releasing, these neurons are releasing the certain hormones. You can say the growth hormone. Now this growth hormone releasing hormone is inhibiting the neurons which are releasing the growth hormone releasing hormone, or it can stimulate the neurons which are inhibiting hormone. So this control of the GHRH is managed by the same molecule itself. But this growth hormone releasing hormone is act onto the pituitary, and anterior pituitary is releasing the growth hormone. Some of the growth hormone targeting to the hypothalamus to inhibit the growth hormone releasing hormone, or it inhibit the growth. So control of the growth hormone will take place. So first it was ultra short loop. The stimulating hormone inhibits it. It is known as now the growth hormone. Now growth hormone target to the target gland. Target gland in case of the growth hormone is not a particular gland. Here there is no particular gland for the growth hormone. The growth hormone is targeting to the all the tissues of the body, but here the growth hormone is also stimulating the liver cells to synthesize the insulin-like growth factors. And the growth factors are the physiological product of this growth hormone. Growth hormone as well as the insulin-like growth factors, Both are targeting to the target tissues for the growth of the body. Now, these insulin-like growth factors are inhibiting the synthesis of the insulin-like growth factors in the liver. So this is the, again, the short loop is there, but this insulin-like growth factors is targeting to inhibit the somatotropes in the anteropituitary and to the hypothalamus of the growth hormone releasing hormone. Both are known as the long loop. Both are known as the long loop. Neural control. Okay, the example is the mechanism. This is the oxytocin is the positive feedback mechanism. The posterior pituitary hormone. Posterior pituitary hormone, once the oxytocin is released, it will further increase the oxytocin release. So ultimately, this will goes to increase the further and further higher concentration into the plasma. The example for delivery of the baby. The neural control. Neural control, that is the stimulation or sympathetic or parasympathetic. There is an arrangement of the sympathetic and parasympathetic that will lead to increase or decrease the concentration of the hormones into the plasma. The example is the sympathetic activity will increase the insulin secretion and parasympathetic will goes to inhibit the insulin secretion. I have given the catecholamines. Catecholamines, they are the epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine is there. So example is the catecholamine because the nervous system, these fibers, the preganglionic fibers are the adrenal medulla, and this adrenal medulla does not have the postganglionic fibers. So whatever the molecule to these preganglionic fibers through these fibers, that will plasma. So complete neuronal system is other neural stimuli. Other neural stimuli means there is a inputs from the external environment or there is a internal environment that will cause to release function of the neurons in the brain, and that will cause to increase the secretion of the neurotransmitters, and that neurotransmitters target to the neurons up to the hypothalamus, endocrine function of the hypothalamus, and that will lead to increase the further activity. Example is the thyroid hormone. Well, whenever there is the thyroid hormone, whenever the environmental temperature is decreased, you can say our body temperature is 47 degree, and if the person is exposed to 20-degree temperature, what will happen? The cold receptors in the skin, they are stimulated. They send the information to the nervous system into the brain, and brain, the certain areas of the brain secrete the neurotransmitter communicating to the hypothalamus, increase the secretion or stimulating the thyroid hormone, releasing hormone, and ultimately thyroid stimulating hormone through the anterior pituitary, and ultimately the thyroid hormone level is right. That will increase the metabolic activity of the tissue, increase the heat to rise the body temperature. Another example is the oxytocin secretion. This is here known as the milk ejection reflex, but it is the this milk ejection reflex is the part of the neurohormonal reflex or neurohumoral reflex. Neurohumoral reflex means it is the sensory inputs are through the nervous system and the uh, output is through the endocrine system. So this is the great example of the neurohumoral system is both the systems are involved. The inputs or sensory inputs through the nervous and output positive response comes to the endocrine system. So spinothalamic uh, sensory fibers are involved into the brain and then oxytocin and prolactin. That we'll see in the posterior pituitary. Rhythmic control. Rhythmic control, there is a rhythm wise, it is based on the rhythm, whether it is a pulsatile, whether it is a diurnal, whether it is seasonal. Episodic or pulsatile means the every 30 minutes or every 1 hour or every 2 hours, there is concentration in the plasma and it decreases in the plasma. Now here I am giving you the example. Example is the gonadotropin releasing hormone. Now gonadotropin releasing hormone, you can see the concentration is decreases and every 30 minutes the concentration of the growth hormone releasing hormone is increases. So there is a the concentration is and that continues throughout the 4 hours. Okay, so that means once in 24 hours the concentration is rising and once in 24 hours the concentration is decreases. Here the time period is given the morning 6 a.m. to next day morning 6 a.m. The early morning the concentration of is in the plasma and you can see around 9 p.m. to midnight the concentration of the hormone is decreases in the plasma. The basal level is very low and then again it is rising. So here the gonadotropin releasing is there for the and here there is a cortisol level. Cortisol level means glucocorticoid. So glucocorticoid level is increases depends upon the ACTH secretion, adenocorticotropic hormone. So once in 24 hours, the time period is fixed. In the early morning, the concentration is rising, and then in midnight, the concentration is periodic. I think we have to stop the class because at 11 o'clock, the 1 hour class. Your next class will be on 20th August. I think 20th August is the holiday declared. So after that, we'll continue our class and we'll get the schedule on your WhatsApp. Okay. Uh, you join for the other class at 11 o'clock. Dr. Payal will take the class. Okay. Okay. Thank you. You can leave the class.